reply to this suggestion, but after a minute or two Esther Dearborn, quite disinterestedly, as she stated, remarked that, after all, to don't feel was pretty much the same as unfeeling. There was a little chorus of groans at this, and Katy said she should certainly impose a fine if such dodges and evasions were practiced again. This was the first meeting, however, and she would be merciful. After this speech she unfolded another paper. It ran: Word, flee. Question: What would you do, love? What would I do, love? Well, I do not know. How can I tell till you are more explicit? If 'twere a rose you held me, I would smell it. If 'twere a mouth you held me, I would kiss it. If 'twere a frog, I'd scream then furies louder. If 'twere a flea, I'd fetch the lion's powder. Only 2 slips remained. One was Katy's own. She knew it by the way in which it was folded, and had almost instinctively avoided and left it for the last. Now, however, she took courage and opened it. The word was measles, and the question, who was the grandmother of invention? These were the lines: The night was horribly dark. The measles broke out in the ark. Little Japhar and Shem and all the young hams were screaming at once for potatoes and clams. What shall I do, said poor Mrs. Noah, all alone by myself in this terrible shower? I know what I'll do. I'll step down in the hold and wake up a lioness grim and old, and tie her close to the children's door, and give her a ginger cake to roar at the top of her voice for an hour or more. And I'll tell the children to cease their din, or I'll let that grim old party in, to stop their squeezels and likewise their measles. She practiced this with the greatest success. She was everyone's grandmother, I guess. That's much the best of all, pronounced Alice Gibbons. I wonder who wrote it. Dear me, did you like it so much? Said Rose, simpering and doing her best to blush. Did you really write it? Said Mary, but Louisa laughed and exclaimed, No use, Rosie, you can't take us in. We know better. Now for the last, said Katy. The word is buckwheat, and the question, what is the origin of dreams? When the nuns are sweetly sleeping, Mrs. Nipson comes a-creeping, creeping like a kitty cat from door to door, as she listens to their slumbers, and most carefully she numbers, counting for every nun a nunlet snore. And the nuns in sweet forgetfulness who lie, dreaming of buckwheat cakes, parental love, and pie, moan softly, twist and turn, and see black cats and fiends who frolic in their glee, and nightmares prancing wildly do abound, while Mrs. Nipson makes her nightly round. Who did write that? Exclaimed Rose. Nobody answered. The girls looked at each other, and Rose scrutinized them all with sharp glances. Well, I never saw such creatures for keeping their countenances, she said. Somebody is as bold as brass. Didn't you see how I blushed when my piece was read? You monkey, whispered Clover, who at that moment caught sight of the handwriting on the paper. Rose gave her a warning pinch, and the both subsided into an unseen giggle. What? The tea-bell? Cried everybody. We wanted to play another game. It's a complete success, whispered Rose ecstatically as they went down the hall. The girls all say they never had such a good time in their lives. I'm so glad I didn't die when the measles when I was little. Well, demanded Lily, so the High and Mighty Society has had a meeting. How did it go off? Delicious, replied Rose, smacking her lips as at the recollection of something very nice. But you mustn't ask any questions, Lily. Outsiders have nothing to do with the SSUC. Our proceedings are strictly private. She ran downstairs with Katy. I think you're real mean, called Lily after them. Then she said to herself, they're just trying to tease. I know it was stupid. End of chapter 6.